The year is 1390. Charles, King of France, sits upon his throne, a figure of once great promise now consumed by the insidious tendrils of madness. His reign, once bright with the fervor of youth, is slowly dimming, casting a long shadow over the French court. Beside him stands Isabeau of Bavaria, his queen. Young, ambitious, and keenly aware of the power slipping through her husband's fingers, she watches him, her mind already calculating the shifting tides of the court. Around them, the court buzzes with whispers. Ambition and fear mingle, as nobles jockey for position, each seeking to gain favor in a kingdom teetering on the brink of chaos. The king's madness takes many forms. Some days he believes himself to be made of glass, terrified of being shattered. Other times he forgets his own name, wandering the halls like a ghost. In the king's absence, an absence that grows longer with each passing day, Isabeau steps into the void. She convenes councils, signs decrees, and navigates the treacherous currents of French politics. The Dauphin, Louis, a sickly boy, is a symbol of hope for the future, yet his fragile health casts a long shadow of doubt. The line of succession hangs precariously in the balance. The Dauphin's only companion is Margot, a small Barbary macaque with eyes as bright and knowing as any courtier. A gift from a foreign dignitary, the monkey provides the young prince with a spark of joy in his otherwise isolated life. Queen Isabeau, during one of her visits to her ailing son, finds herself intrigued by the unusual creature. There is something in the monkey's gaze, a spark of intelligence, that captivates her. Soon, Margot begins to spend more time in the queen's presence. Isabeau, weary of the endless power struggles and the suffocating formality of the court, finds solace in the monkey's simple, unyielding attention. Whispers begin to circulate. The queen's fondness for the monkey is unusual. Courtiers exchange knowing glances, and rumors begin to take root, twisting and distorting the truth. Unbeknownst to the king, lost in the labyrinth of his own mind, the seeds of scandal are being sown. The court, already unstable, is about to be plunged into deeper chaos. And Isabeau, Queen of France, sits with her unusual companion, unaware of the storm that is about to break upon them. A storm fueled by whispers, fueled by power, and fueled by a little monkey named Margot. The Dauphin, Louis, heir to the throne of France, was a fragile child. Confined indoors due to his delicate constitution, he spent his days in quiet solitude, a pale reflection of the robust future king he was meant to be. A persistent cough racked his small frame, a constant reminder of his frailty. Physicians fussed and prescribed remedies, but little seemed to ease his suffering. The court buzzed with concern, though more for the future of the monarchy than for the well-being of the boy himself. A healthy heir was paramount to securing the Valois dynasty. A merchant seeking favor arrived bearing a gift, hoping to lift the Dauphin's spirits. It was an unusual offering procured from distant lands. The silk cloth was drawn back, revealing a small, curious creature within a gilded cage. Margot, a Barbary macaque with intelligent, inquisitive eyes, surveyed her new surroundings. Her small, wrinkled face held an almost human-like expression. A genuine laugh escaped the Dauphin's lips, the first in what seemed like an age. The monkey's playful antics sparked a flicker of joy in his weary heart. Louis named her Margot. She became his constant companion, a furry confidant in his lonely world. He would spend hours talking to her, sharing his dreams and fears with the attentive creature. Queen Isabeau, ever watchful, observed the burgeoning bond between her son and the monkey. A curious expression played on her lips, a mixture of amusement and something akin to interest. She began to visit the Dauphin's chamber more frequently, bringing treats for Margit. The monkey, initially wary, soon succumbed to the queen's charm, accepting the offerings with nimble fingers. Soon, Margit was not just a pet for the Dauphin, but a favored companion of the queen herself. Isabeau found a peculiar solace in the monkey's presence, a silent understanding that transcended words. As Charles's madness deepened, Isabeau's influence grew. With Margit often at her side, she navigated the treacherous waters of the French court, a queen in all but name, with a monkey as her unlikely confidant. The whispers had begun, faint at first but soon to grow into a storm. The Dauphin, weakened by persistent illness, found little joy in the grand halls of the Louvre. Margit, however, seemed to thrive within the gilded cage, her presence a peculiar comfort to the ailing boy. Queen Isabeau, increasingly drawn to the Dauphin's peculiar pet, began to make frequent visits to his chambers. Her interest in Margit seemed to grow with each passing day, overshadowing even her concern for the sickly heir. Margit's diet soon surpassed that of many courtiers. Isabeau insisted on the finest fruits, the sweetest nuts, all served in miniature versions of royal tableware. The monkey's presence became a spectacle, an oddity whispered about in hushed tones. Miniature robes, replicas of the queen's own gowns, were commissioned for Margit. Velvet, silk, and lace were used to create a wardrobe befitting a creature of such elevated status. The seamstresses, though bewildered, dared not question the queen's orders. The Dauphin's bedchamber, once his sanctuary, now belonged to Margit. Louis watched, a silent observer, as the queen lavished affection upon the monkey, affection he himself rarely received. The whispers began to spread like wildfire. The queen's fondness for the monkey was no longer a curiosity, but a scandal. Courtiers, ever eager to gain favor or undermine their rivals, fueled the flames of gossip. The king, lost in the labyrinth of his own mind, remained oblivious to the scandal brewing around him. Margit, in her peculiar way, seemed to offer him a strange sort of comfort, a connection that transcended words or reason. The queen's enemies saw an opportunity. The scandal of Margit was a weapon, a means to undermine Isabeau's authority and seize power for themselves. Plots were hatched in secret, alliances forged in the shadows. Despite her outward display of power, Isabeau felt the weight of the court's judgment. The whispers, the stares, the veiled insults, they chipped away at her resolve. Only in Margit's presence did she find a semblance of peace, a brief respite from the political storms that raged around her. News of the scandal had reached far beyond the palace walls. Anonymous letters filled with accusations and insinuations circulated among the nobility, further poisoning the atmosphere. The queen's reputation was at stake, and with it, the stability of the monarchy. The queen, refusing to be cowed by the scandal, faced her accusers with unwavering resolve. She presented herself as a victim of malicious gossip, a woman unjustly targeted by her enemies. But the seeds of doubt had been sown, and the court watched, waiting to see how the drama would unfold. The scandal had changed everything. The Dauphin, neglected and forgotten, was left to grapple with the complexities of courtly intrigue, a world far removed from his childish understanding. Margit, caught in the crossfire, had vanished from his chambers, a casualty of the queen's ambition and the court's insatiable appetite for gossip. The stage was set for a political storm, and the fate of the French monarchy hung in the balance. Queen Isabeau, increasingly isolated by her husband's malady, found solace in the company of the Dauphin's pet. Her affections for Margit, the monkey, did not go unnoticed. The young Dauphin, observant despite his illness, witnessed the growing bond between his mother and his unusual pet. He felt more and more isolated from the love of his mother. Margit, dressed in miniature finery, began to share in the royal feasts, a sight that raised eyebrows among the assembled courtiers. In the corridors of the Louvre, whispers began to circulate. The Queen's unusual attachment to the monkey became fodder for gossip and speculation. The king, lost in his own world, remained unaware of the murmurs that plagued his court, the rumors swirling around his queen. Isabeau continued her routine, seemingly indifferent to the growing unease, strolling through the gardens with Margit as her constant companion. "Have you seen the queen lately?" one courtier whispered. "Her affection for that creature is unseemly." The other replied, his voice low, "It is more than unseemly. It is unnatural. What does she see in that animal?" Isabeau, though seemingly impervious to the gossip, couldn't escape the loneliness that gnawed at her. Margit was a comforting presence in a world of madness and deceit. Even the servants, far removed from the court's machinations, whispered about the queen and her monkey, their rumors fueled by speculation and conjecture. The Dauphin's health weakened. He was alone more often, as Margit received all the queen's attentions. Soon, some in the court began to question the queen's motivations. The whispers intensified, fueled by fear, jealousy, and the ever-present hunger for power. The scandal was brewing, threatening to engulf the French court in its poisonous fumes. The queen's favor became a currency, more valuable than gold, and those who understood its worth knew the quickest path to her heart led through the small, simian creature. Gifts poured in for Margit, jewels, silks, and delicacies from across the known world. Courtiers, desperate to gain Isabeau's attention, outdid each other in extravagant displays of affection for the monkey. The Dauphin, once the center of attention, now watched from the sidelines as his pet received the adoration that was once his own. A quiet resentment began to simmer in the young boy's heart. Jesters sang songs of Margit's cleverness, poets penned verses celebrating her beauty, and artists created portraits capturing her likeness. The monkey had become a muse, a symbol of the queen's favor, a means to an end. The king, lost in the labyrinth of his own mind, remained oblivious to the growing obsession with the monkey. His absences only amplified the queen's power, her influence stretching further with each passing day. At feasts, Margit tasted the finest wines and delicacies before they were presented to the queen, a privilege usually reserved for the most esteemed guests. The courtiers watched, their smiles strained, as the monkey lapped up the attention. The Dauphin, neglected and forgotten, retreated into his own world. He longed for the days when Margit was his companion, not a rival for his mother's affection. Rumors swirled that the queen confided in Margit, sharing secrets she wouldn't dare utter to another soul. The monkey had become her confidant, her closest companion in a world of deceit and betrayal. The courtiers, ever watchful, scrutinized Margit's every move, searching for clues to the queen's moods and intentions. The monkey had become a barometer of royal favor, a living symbol of power. Merchants showered Margit with gifts, hoping to gain access to the queen's ear. The monkey had become a gatekeeper, controlling the flow of wealth and influence within the court. The Dauphin's resentment grew with each passing day, festering in the shadows of his neglected chambers. He began to see Margit not as a pet, but as a usurper, a symbol of his own diminishing importance. The queen, basking in the adoration and the power she wielded, remained oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. The scandal of Margit was just beginning, its consequences yet to be fully realized. The weight of the crown pressed heavily upon Isabeau. Charles's madness deepened, and with it, her isolation. She found herself confiding in an unlikely companion. Margit, adorned in a tiny velvet gown, became the silent recipient of Isabeau's woes. The queen spoke of courtly intrigues, of Charles's declining state, and of her own loneliness. The king's detachment grew more pronounced. Days would pass where he failed to recognize even Isabeau, his mind lost in a labyrinth of delusion. With Charles incapacitated, Isabeau took on more of the responsibilities of the crown. Margit remained a constant presence, a silent witness to the queen's struggles. The court buzzed with rumors. Whispers followed Isabeau like shadows, twisting her affection for Margit into something far more scandalous. And even young Louis noticed the shift. Margit, once his playful companion, now spent more time in the queen's chambers than his own. The queen flaunted her fondness for the monkey, seemingly daring the court to challenge her. Margit, in her miniature finery, became a symbol of Isabeau's power. Margit dined at the queen's table, tasted the finest wines, and slept in the royal chambers. The extravagance fueled the gossip, painting a picture of unparalleled decadence. The whispers grew louder, the rumors bolder. Some spoke of sorcery, others of madness. All agreed that the queen's behavior was unnatural. Isabeau remained defiant, seemingly impervious to the growing scandal. But behind the regal facade, a flicker of vulnerability betrayed her unease. During one of his lucid moments, Charles noticed Isabeau's behavior with Margit. However, the king had grown indifferent to the affairs of his court, and merely saw the monkey as another distraction from his pain. Unbeknownst to all, Margit, the small Barbary macaque, was at the center of a storm. The queen's confidant, the court's fascination, and a symbol of a kingdom teetering on the brink. The whispers had become shouts. What began as courtly amusement over Isabeau's fondness for Margit had curdled into something far more dangerous, political ammunition. Charles's grip on reality was loosening. His erratic behavior provided ample opportunity for those who sought to exploit his weakness and undermine Isabeau's influence. The Dauphin, too young to understand the intricacies of courtly machinations, remained oblivious to the storm gathering around him and his beloved pet. The royal council, a viper's nest of ambition and intrigue, became the stage for Isabeau's slow undoing. Each whispered word, each sidelong glance, was a dagger aimed at her heart. Isabeau found herself increasingly isolated, even within her own court. Only Margit seemed immune to the venomous whispers, a small, furry creature in a world of vipers. Plots thickened like stew in a winter kitchen. Alliances shifted with the wind, and those who had once sworn fealty to Isabeau now conspired against her, eager to seize any advantage. Charles's madness served as a convenient smokescreen for the conspirators. His increasingly public outbursts cast doubt on the legitimacy of his reign, and by extension, Isabeau's authority. Isabeau, though besieged, was not without her own weapons. She confronted her enemies with cold fury, seeking to unravel their plots and expose their treachery. News from abroad further complicated matters. The 100 Years' War raged on, placing additional strain on the already fragile French monarchy. The symbol of the scandal, Margit herself, became a pawn. Those seeking to discredit Isabeau used the monkey's very existence as proof of the queen's supposed depravity. The poison of the scandal began to seep into the innocent heart of the Dauphin, shattering his idyllic world. Isabeau knew that the storm had only just begun. The scandal of Margit was merely a symptom of a deeper malaise, a corruption that threatened to consume the French monarchy from within. A fragile clarity descended upon Charles, a brief reprieve from the storm in his mind. He saw the court not as it was, but as it perceived him, a king adrift, a kingdom rudderless. The whispers, usually muffled behind tapestries and hurried footsteps, reached even the king's ears. They spoke of the queen and the monkey, of affections deemed unnatural, of a court teetering on the edge of scandal. Doubt gnawed at Charles. Could the rumors be true? Was his queen, the mother of his children, truly indulging in such bizarre affections? The thought sickened him. Isabeau, oblivious to the storm brewing around her, preened before her mirror. The whispers, if she heard them, were dismissed as the envious murmurings of those who craved her power. Margit, the innocent catalyst of the scandal, remained blissfully unaware of the turmoil she had wrought. For her, the queen's attention was simply warmth, food, and the freedom to explore. Charles, steeling his resolve, decided to confront Isabeau directly. He would demand an explanation, a denial, anything to quell the rising tide of unease within him. The queen met her husband's gaze, unflinching. Margit, sensing the tension, huddled closer to Isabeau, her small body trembling slightly. "The monkey," Charles exclaimed, his voice strained. They say you lavish it with more affection than your own children. Is this true, Isabeau?" Isabeau's silence was more damning than any denial. Her eyes, usually so shrewd, flashed with barely suppressed rage. The king had dared to question her, to intrude upon her private world. Unseen, unheard, the Dauphin watched the scene unfold. He understood little of the adult drama, but he sensed the discord, the broken harmony of his family. Defeated, Charles turned and left the chamber, the weight of his crown pressing down upon him. He knew then that the rumors, however outlandish, held a kernel of truth. His queen was lost to him, perhaps forever. Isabeau remained, the queen in her gilded cage, her affections a twisted reflection of the power she craved. Margit, nestled in her arms, was a symbol of defiance, of control, and of the deepening chasm within the French court. The storm broke with the dawn. Accusations, long murmured in shadowed corners, were now shouted in the open. The Queen of France, it was said, had lost all sense of propriety. Charles, in a moment of terrifying lucidity, sensed the unrest, but his understanding, fractured as it was, only amplified the chaos in his mind. He saw enemies where there were courtiers, treachery in every whisper. The Dauphin, frail and innocent, clung to his mother, oblivious to the true nature of the storm gathering around him. He only knew that the familiar comfort of the court had turned cold and hostile. Margit, the unwitting catalyst, remained blissfully ignorant. Perched upon Isabeau's shoulder, she seemed the only creature in the room without a care in the world, a tiny, furry symbol of the court's absurdity. "Enough!" Isabeau's voice cut through the murmurs like a shard of glass. "These are vile slanders, baseless accusations born of envy and malice. I will not stand idly by while my honor, and the honor of France, is dragged through the mud." A hush fell over the court. They had expected denial, perhaps, but not this raw display of defiance. The air crackled with anticipation, wondering what the queen would do next. Isabeau descended from the dais, her every movement a statement of power. She knew who had orchestrated this charade, who had whispered the poison into the ears of the court, and she intended to confront them. Lord Armand and Duke Philippe, two of the most influential figures in the French court, found themselves under the Queen's unwavering scrutiny. Their carefully constructed web of intrigue was about to be tested. "Lord Armand," Isabeau said, her voice a silken threat, "you have been a loyal servant of France. But loyalty can be a fickle thing, easily swayed by ambition and personal gain. Have you forgotten to whom you swore your allegiance?" Armand sputtered a denial, but his voice lacked conviction. The court watched, breathless, as the Queen exposed the rot that festered beneath the surface of their gilded world. Suddenly Charles rose from his throne, his eyes blazing with an unsettling clarity. "Traitors!" he roared, his voice cracking with madness and a touch of clarity, the weight of the crown and the scandal crushing his last sanity. Isabeau watched Charles, her heart a cold stone in her chest. The scandal had reached its boiling point, and the future of the French monarchy hung precariously in the balance, threatened to be lost, just like her sanity. The scandal had ripped through the court like a wildfire. Isabeau's influence, once absolute, was now contested at every turn. Her every decision was scrutinized, every action interpreted through the lens of the rumors that clung to her name. Charles, lost in the labyrinth of his madness, remained a puppet king. His periods of lucidity were fleeting, and the weight of governance fell squarely upon shoulders ill-equipped to bear it. The Dauphin, weakened and perpetually unwell, observed the court's descent into chaos with a quiet understanding beyond his years. He was a pawn, like Margaret, in a game he did not fully comprehend. Margaret, the unwitting catalyst of the scandal, was quietly removed from the court. Her fate, like that of many small creatures caught in the wheels of power, was uncertain. Isabeau, stripped of her most cherished companion and her unyielding influence, retreated into herself. The scandal had wounded her deeply, leaving scars that would never fully heal. Charles continued his descent into madness, his grip on reality loosening with each passing day. The stability of the kingdom hung precariously by a thread, threatened by internal strife and external enemies. The court, ever a breeding ground for treachery and ambition, capitalized on Isabeau's weakened state. Factions formed, alliances shifted, and the struggle for power intensified. The Dauphin's health continued to decline, casting a long shadow over the future of France. His frailty was a constant reminder of the kingdom's vulnerability. Despite the scandal, Isabeau refused to be completely sidelined. She continued to wield what influence she could, navigating the treacherous waters of courtly politics with a renewed sense of determination. Margaret, released into the wild, was left to fend for herself. Her days of royal pampering were over, and the harsh realities of nature closed in around her. France, like its king, was slowly unraveling. The 100 Years' War raged on, and the kingdom teetered on the brink of collapse. The scandal of the Queen and the monkey was but a symptom of a deeper malaise. The affair of the Dauphin, Isabeau, and Margaret the monkey would fade into history, a bizarre footnote in the reign of a mad king. But the consequences of that scandal, the further weakening of the monarchy and the sowing of discord within the court, would linger long after the whispers had died away, shaping the destiny of France for generations to come.